Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we explore life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. Yes, this is the annual celebration of everything Star Wars that takes place on May the 4th every single year, and 2026 is no exception. This year, for May the 4th, I decided that since we're approaching the release of The Mandalorian and Grogu in theaters later on this month, on May the 22nd to be exact, why not go over the 3 seasons of the Disney Plus Lucasfilms television series The Mandalorian, which is a show that I, I just the first season was great. Nothing compares to that first season as far as this show is concerned. The other 2 seasons were fine, but that first season was bananas good. It was nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Dramatic Series. It is one of the only things to come out of this Lucasfilms Disney era of Star Wars that I thoroughly enjoyed. I did like Andor. I did like Rogue One. It nothing I really hated, but there are certain films or television shows that I would never go back and watch. After I watched the first time, I'm good. I'll never go back and watch the trilogy. Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker. I would never go back and watch those. Not because they were just that bad. It just didn't hook me as far as Star Wars is concerned, where I can watch the original trilogy over and over and over and over again. I hey, I even watched the sequel or the prequel trilogy more than I've watched this latest trilogy, and that's saying a lot, you know. But this new era of Star Wars, since Disney acquired it, I haven't. Is nothing that really hooked me, other than the Mandalorian. Uh, Coming out of this era, you had, as I mentioned, the sequel trilogy. You had Solo, a Star Wars story. Over on Disney Plus, you had The Mandalorian. You also had Ahsoka, which didn't really land. Obi-Wan Kenobi didn't really land. The less said about the Acolyte, the better. Skeleton Crew. I actually enjoyed Skeleton Crew, but it wasn't Star Wars. The Mandalorian, for all intents and purposes, I felt was real Star Wars. I felt Star Warsy watching that show, and for the first season, definitely. It kind of was the law of diminishing returns after that first season, but still enjoyable nonetheless. So, in honor of May the 4th be with you, I've decided that we're gonna go just quick. I'm not gonna linger on every single episode of The Mandalorian because we'll be here forever. So I decided we're gonna do. I did. I've gotten into the habit of doing these recaps and just doing plot points throughout the seasons and what's leading us up to either the next season, in this case, the movie. So that's what we're gonna do for The Mandalorian, and I'm not gonna give a review because this is a recap. So we're just gonna recap. I might give my 2 cents on a couple of plot points that took place that I liked, some that I didn't, but not gonna linger on too long. Like, we'll just push on through. But in case you don't know what The Mandalorian is all about, it's set 5 years after Return of the Jedi and 25 years before The Force Awakens, just to give you a chronological landscape of where this story takes place. And before I go into it, let me give you this little plot point here. I've mentioned in past Star Wars property reviews that this Disney era of Star Wars have relied so heavily on the Skywalker saga. We haven't ventured out in any sense of the universe. And this is Star Wars, we're just stuck in this little timeline revolving around Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader and, all that stuff. And all that's good. I know that's nostalgic wise is great, for us who can't think outside the box, cool. But you want to hear new stories. And granted, this is new. This is a different story in terms of the Mandalorian, but it's still set in that universe, and it's still hooked up with the Skywalker saga to the point. And we're gonna get to that, but in season 2, we actually got Luke Skywalker on the show, and so it's so enriched in that saga. Everything, every show, every movie that has come out in the last 10, 15 years since we started this new little run of Star Wars movies and shows, it is all evolved around Skywalker. And it's time to move on. And if you want to continue on with that, let's bounce and move forward. Now, I give the sequel trilogy that at least you was moving forward with the story, but you was still stuck in the past because you brought back Luke, you brought back Leia, you brought back Han, Chewie, and all of the good R2D2 and C-3PO. It's all that was still linked up with it. But let's move on. It's time to move on and tell some new stories. Now, The Mandalorian, for his credit, did tell a new story. It's something that is very interesting. What a lot of people felt, going off of what you read off social media and whatnot during the time of the release of season 1 of The Mandalorian. Like, oh, why couldn't it have been Boba Fett? They could have just bounced off of Boba Fett. Everybody has this obsession with Boba Fett. And I never was that guy. As much as I love Star Wars, I never understood the obsession with Boba Fett. Now, yeah, I wanted to know more about him because we didn't get much of him in the first film. He barely spoke. I think he had one line of dialogue, maybe. I can't even remember now. But I was never like clamoring for a Boba Fett movie or TV show, which we did get. And I'm sure we all regret that. At least those of us who wanted a Boba Fett show. A show that was so bad. Or I'm not going to say bad. So uninteresting that they had to bring in The Mandalorian to save it. Because the second half of that show was basically Mandalorian 2.5, season 2.5. It did nothing to tell Boba Fett's story. All it did was continue on the Mandalorian story going into season 3. But nonetheless, it does sit into that time frame in the Star Wars chronological order. And it tells the story of a lone bounty hunter who goes on the run to protect the child. And we find out that child is Baby Yoda. That was the name that was given to him in the first season because he didn't have one. We just knew him as Baby Yoda, the cutest little thing you could ever conjure up over there at Lucasfilms. And later on, we found out that his name is Grogu. And to be completely honest with you, I would have preferred to stick with Baby Yoda. But it's cool. Now, the one thing about this show, spoiler alert, maybe we'll find out in the movie, we never find out his origin on the show. Where'd he come from? What race is he from? Is he part of Yoda's lineage or whatever? They taking a sweet time with that explanation, but he's still a cool character, a cute character, and an interesting character that adds a different dynamic to this show. The Mandalorian, or Din Djarin, is played by Mr. I'm in Everything, Pedro Pascal. Pedro Pascal is in every single show and or movie. It's not even it's almost to the point where you're oversaturated with Pedro Pascal. I think a lot of his uh, uh TV shows and movies lately are starting to suffer a little bit because of the overexposure. That's my feeling. I'm me personally. I love Pedro Pascal. Loved him on The Last of Us. Love him on this show. I liked him as Reed Richards on Fantastic Four. He's a really cool actor, a really good actor with a lot of range because he can play all of these characters. But uh, as far as the Mandalorian is concerned, we don't see his face. We hear his voice. We don't see his face maybe once or twice on the show. I think, yeah, twice. No, 3 times on the show. And that's it. That's because the Mandalorian, going by their religion, they can't remove their helmets. So that has led to a lot of speculation from fans of the show, fans of Star Wars, that Pedro Pascal is virtually just a voice actor. He's not really under the helmet and costume there on set. He's not live on set filming. He's more of a voice actor. Now, I'm more than certain that a lot of the actual Din Djarin that we see on the show is probably a stand-in or stunt performer. I'm sure. I'm pretty sure. But I think he does get in the suit. I think he is there on set more than what people think. At least that's my feeling. I could be wrong, which I'm wrong a lot. But I really believe that he's there more often than not. This show has a unique filming thing. It's on the volume. They call it the volume. It is filmed at Industrial Light and Magic. It's this thing that they call stagecraft technology that they created for the show. It's a 360-degree wall. It's basically the whole room of a video wall, and it creates the environments around you. So what you see, why it looks like these actors are actually in these environments, because they're filming on a set, is on a stage. They're not on location, of course, but it feels real, as opposed of being in front of a green screen, which at this point moviegoers have grown accustomed to and can spot it. We can spot green screen from a mile away, the fake backgrounds. But this new technology, even though you can kind of still spot it, but it's not as blatant as green screen. It looks more organic. And I do like the way it looked. Actually, I was blown away when I found out that that's what they do for the show. I thought they were shooting not the whole thing, but a couple of places on location. No, it's all within this studio. And one of the other great things about this show is, and a lot of other shows as well, it's not just The Mandalorian, but they use not only this new technology, but they use practical effects. A lot of practical effects on the show. I deeply appreciated it for that as well. I love in-camera effects. Season 1 premiered on November the 12th, 2019, believe it or not. 8 episodes releasing weekly on Disney Plus. Key moments in season 1. We start off with the mission. The mission in season 1, Din Djarin, he accepts a bounty from the client, who we find out to be Warner Hogsog, to retrieve this child. And it comes to find out it's a 50-year-old child, which is weird to say. it's strange to say 50-year-old child. But that child comes to be Baby Yoda, a.k.a. Grogu. So we go on this adventure of Mando, or Din Djarin. He goes and search for this child. He finds the child, and they create a bond. And so he delivers the child. He still has an oath, and that's one thing about Mandalorians. They stick to their oaths. And so he goes to deliver the child as instructed, even though he feels this bond. He leaves the child and immediately feels guilty and breaks out the child, who returns back to the Imperial facility where he's being held, breaks him out. Now we off on a run. He's being hunted. He travels the galaxy. He being Din Djarin with the child. Uh, Travels the galaxy to protect the child from other bounty hunters who have been commissioned to take down Mando and retrieve the child, and Moff Gideon, who is played by the great Giancarlo Esposito, and he is seeking the child for unspecific reasons. We don't know. Is unknown at this point why Moff Gideon is seeking out the child as well. Mando isn't alone though. He does have allies. He builds a team with Cara Dune, who is a former rebel stock trooper who is played by Gina Carano, who we ain't going to get into it here, but was unceremoniously let go from Lucasfilms and Disney due to her political views. Let's just say that. But Cara Dune, she's one of the allies. IG-11, which is a reprogrammed droid, is helping him out as well. And Kirill, who is repairing the Razor Crest, which is the Mandalorian ship. Kirill is one of my favorite characters on the show, you know, because he is voiced by the great Nick Nolte, given that graggly, old, broken down voice with his catchphrase "I have spoken." You know, it is money. Gone too soon, that character, but he is assisted. But we get to the end of this season, and unfortunately, Kirill and IG-11, they die in the battle when the Imperial forces on Navarro converge to take down the Mandalorian and retrieve the child. Din Djarin, he fights off Moff Gideon, and who reveals he has the dark saber, and officially becomes the guardian of the child after being tasked with finding his kind. So season 1 wraps up with Din Djarin leaving Navarro with the child, adapting a quote unquote "this is the way" mentality towards the child's safety and taking responsibility for finding the Jedi. And so a real good start to this season, or to this show. And it felt like at this point that Star Wars was back on track, man. It felt like this was what we needed as Star Wars fans. Just something that we can all get behind and cheer. And for the most part, I think the fandom did. You know, I don't recall hearing any backlash towards season 1. People may go back now and feel it wasn't as good as I first thought, or something like that. I don't know. Like I say, I haven't heard any. I think collectively everybody enjoyed that first season of The Mandalorian, and so did I. So we move on to season 2. And in season 2, Din Djarin, his quest to reunite Grogu with the Jedi, travels through the galaxy. He teams up with some new allies this season. We get Bo-Katan, we get Boba Fett, we get Ahsoka in this season. They battle Moff Gideon, who seeks Grogu for his blood, ultimately resulting in, hey, the biggest cameo of all time. Luke Skywalker pops up in season 2 and takes Grogu for training after Mando wins the dark saber. Key points in season 2: the search for the Jedi. Din Djarin, he seeks out other Mandalorians to find the Jedi, and this leads him to Cobb, who is played on the show by Timothy Olyphant. Who, man, I love Timothy Olyphant. I don't know what it is about him, I just I just like him. It's not one particular character that he ever played, whether it was on Justified or Hitman or whatever it is. I just like him. He's just a cool dude. Whenever he pops up on screen, and for him to pop up on this show was pretty cool. And Cobb has, believe it or not, the armor of Boba Fett, and this eventually leads Din Djarin to Bo-Katan, who seeks to reclaim the Darksaber from Moff Gideon. And so his allies on this particular season, you have Grief Karga, who is played by the late great Carl Weathers, who, I mean, you never appreciate somebody until they gone. Carl Weathers was amazing, man. He even directed, I think, 1 or 2 episodes on this show. I don't know if it was this season or season 3 in particular, but I think it was season 3, and it was pretty good show. At least episode, I should say. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. But yeah, he plays Grief. Cara Dune. They link up with him to destroy this Imperial lab. They fight this dragon. They team up with Boba Fett on this season as well. We get a long-awaited live-action adaptation of Ahsoka Tano on this show. Ahsoka Tano, who came to fame on the animated show Clone Wars and Rebels, to see her in live action, played by Rosario Dawson here, who looks perfect as Ahsoka Tano, which was basically a backdoor pilot to her own show on Disney Plus, which I think we're getting a second season to very soon as well. But Din Djarin finds Ahsoka, who reveals that the child's name is not Baby Yoda, it is indeed Grogu. But she refuses to train Grogu because of his deep attachment to Din Djarin. She's like, well, there's no way I can train him. He's too linked to you. But she does point him in another direction to seek the Seeing Stone or another planet. And so while they get to that planet, the Imperial Dark Troopers kidnap Grogu after destroying the Razor Crest, Mandalorian ship, which was a cool looking ship, man. That was a that was a gut punch because I like that ship. And so we get to the finale and we get to the rescue of Grogu. We have Din Djarin, Boba Fett, Cara Dune, Bo-Katan. They infiltrate Moff Gideon's cruiser. And so Din Djarin, he defeats Moff Gideon in combat, and he wins the Darksaber and becomes the rightful ruler of Mandalore. And this pretty much throws a monkey wrench in the relationship between him and Bo-Katan, who was seeking that goal. We get the cameo of all cameos at the end of this emotional finale of season 2, when a Jedi arrives at this station. His ship docks and we see a lightsaber light up, and it's disguised, but we know who it is. We all know who it was. It was just gonna be, how is he gonna look? Is it gonna be Mark Hamill of present time, where he looks nothing like he did in 1977 or 1983? It's the visual effects here, bro. The facial, what they call it, the facial replace, whatever it is. It's AI now, but they weren't using that particular thing. I forgot what deep fake. I think that's what it was. But anyway, Luke Skywalker arrives and he takes Grogu for training, but it was an emotional end when Din Djarin was saying goodbye to Grogu as he handed him over to Luke, and he took off his helmet. And like I mentioned earlier before, Mandalorians are not to take off their helmets under no circumstances for no reason and show their face to anybody else, but he showed it to Grogu. And that was that was touching, man, because you can say what you want that Pedro Pascal, he's only a voice actor. He only showed up for this one scene or whatever, but he showed up and showed out because it was so emotional. You could see it on his face. It was powerful. It was a powerful moment. A great ending to this season. Unfortunately, this season led into the Book of Boba Fett, and it's the less said about that, the better. A little side note: in the Book of Boba Fett, it's revealed that Grogu leaves his training to reunite with Din Djarin. So we don't know that unless we watch the Book of Boba Fett, because when season 3 starts, they're back together again. And so there's this is where they started getting too messy. Fortunately or unfortunately for me, I watched Book of Boba Fett, so I knew this was going on. But there's a lot of people who didn't watch Book of Boba Fett or started watching it and gave up 2 or 3 episodes in. Understandably. But me, I'm an idiot. I watched it all the way through, and that's how I found out that information. But that's what spawned off of season 2 of The Mandalorian. So, with that being said, let's jump into season 3. And season 3, which premiered on Disney Plus on March the 1st of 2023. This season, they focus mainly on Din Djarin trying to redeem himself by bathing in the living waters of Mandalore. Also, helping Bo-Katan reunite the fractured factions in Mandalorian lore and fighting to retake their homeworld from Moff Gideon. This was clearly the weaker of the 2 seasons, or 3 seasons, I should say. It was an all right season, but it dragged, man. It just felt so draggy, this particular season of The Mandalorian. First off, our little highlights that we had this season: Din Djarin, he restores his honor by visiting the ruined planet of Mandalore by bathing in the living waters beneath the mines. But there was a fight to even get to Mandalore, which was devastated by the First Order. You have Bo-Katan is tasked with uniting the various Mandalorian factions, eventually wielding the Darksaber to lead them back to their home planet of Mandalore. You have the return of Moff Gideon. The season reveals Moff Gideon escaped custody, has been experimenting with cloning to create force-sensitive clones of himself, and is working with the Imperial Shadow Council. Like I mentioned, the battle for Mandalore, the Mandalorians, they launch a combined assault to reclaim their home planet. During the final battle, the Darksaber is destroyed by Moff Gideon, but the Mandalorians prevail nonetheless, with axe wolves crashing a ship into the base to defeat Moff Gideon. Grogu uses the IG-12 Merc unit, which is rebuilt from the remains of IG-11, to move and to speak. While his backstory shows he was rescued from the Jedi Temple during Order 66. And then we get to the finale of season 3, where the Mandalorians officially reclaim their planet. Din Djarin officially adopts Grogu, and he becomes Din Grogu, which was pretty cool. And they settle into their new home on Navarro, with Din Djarin doing independent contract work for the New Republic. This season shifts from a lone wolf and cub story to a larger narrative about rebuilding culture and uniting for a common cause, and it features heavy Mandalorian focused lore and action throughout this season. I think the problem we have here, which it isn't a problem, but it is a problem, nonetheless, if that makes any sense, we started off on this journey all the way back in season 1 that this was a lone wolf and cub story. And when we finally get to season 3, it became something bigger. They kind of abandoned their mission statement and went in a completely different direction, which is nothing wrong with that, but it didn't feel organic in a sense, at least to me. It felt like it was forced to kind of set up a bigger universe instead of just being disciplined and focused on telling a story that involves the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, or the Mandalorian and Grogu, and follow them on their many adventures. But it turned into a soft launch into other Star Wars properties. We got soft launches to Ahsoka, soft launches into the Book of Boba Fett, soft launches into, I guess in a way, a alleged Bo-Katan series that they're developing. So there's a possibility of that too. It was just a lot going on instead of this singular focus. Now, I'm all for telling a story in a bigger universe, not to sound, I don't want to be accused of being a hypocrite, like I was saying earlier. Yes, you want to tell a story of a wider universe, but in this particular sense, I'm watching The Mandalorian. I didn't want to watch, everybody else's story. I want to know the Mandalorian story. I want to know Din Djarin's story or Grogu's story, and that's it. That's it. But that's where it kind of started to fall off. It was setting up so much instead of just staying singular focused. But with all that being said, all 3 seasons were pretty good. The first season was great. The second season was good, and the third season was decent. And that's the best I can describe The Mandalorian in its totality. But the big question will be, how would this movie play out? Will this be a just continuation of the TV show? And I mean that in the sense of the look. Because if you're going to make that jump to the big screen, I want to feel the epicness of watching this on the big screen. I don't want to go to the movie, spend my hard-earned $15 or however much it is these days. I mean, because it feels like it goes up every week, every time I go to the theater. If I'm gonna spend my hard-earned money, I don't want to sit there and pay $30 for a popcorn and a cold drink. I don't want to sit there and watch something that I'm midway through. I'm like, I could have watched this on Disney Plus. I don't want to make that statement. I want it to be bigger. I want the stakes to be higher. I want it to be just scale wise some of the most gorgeous cinematography I've ever seen. We'll see. I mean, judging off the trailer, it looks promising to a sense, but that's only a 2.5 minute trailer. So I'm not ready to say, oh man, this is going to be great. No, I'm not to that point yet, but I am excited in the sense that we are getting a Star Wars film in theaters, something we haven't gotten in a long time. And you never miss something till it's gone, you complain, we complained. I ain't gonna say you, but we complained about the content that Lucasfilms and Disney was putting out with these Star Wars films in this last few outings, and now we're not getting any, and it's like, wait, man, I need to see Star Wars on the big screen, and I'm excited to see it, and it's a good re-entry into the theatrical experience with Star Wars, with The Mandalorian. I think the most celebrated property they've put out in the last 15 years. Is so it's smart in that sense if we want to kind of not reboot, but revitalize the fandom, and I'm all for it. I can't wait. I'm I'm just ready to get back in the theater. I've grown to love the theatrical experience, if I could talk. Uh, over the last few months, it came back because after COVID, it kind of left, and it just didn't have that feel. And then for about 3 years, 3 or 4 years after COVID, people just been staying away from theaters. And you go to the theater now to watch a movie, you might get 5, 6 people in the screen, at least for me, around me. I know theaters got to be packed, because there are movies that are making billions of dollars in the theater. So it's not like this is a common thing across the world, but I know in my area, a lot of people sparingly go to the theaters because it's so expensive. For one, it's expensive to go, and then the quality hasn't been that good. The movies haven't been great. Nothing event wise where you can run out and go. Everybody wants to go see it. Other than Barbie. That's the last thing I remember people going in droves, in groups to go see. Sinners too, because I remember going to see Sinners, and people were dressed up in old timey attire, and that was cool, man. I felt left out. I wanted to go find some old 1930s gar to put on, but nothing event wise like it used to be, and Star Wars is the most event movie going experience you can think of, man. It started it all. It started fandom. It started nerddom, geekdom. It is the birth of pop culture, Star Wars. And so welcome back in the theaters. The Mandalorian and Grogu will be in theaters on May the 22nd. I'll be there with bells on, baby. I can't wait. And hopefully this little rundown of the last 3 seasons of The Mandalorian will get you all caught up for the movie. You won't go and be lost. Like, what's going on here? Why are we here? And we probably still, and I've rewatched it for this show, and I probably still will have that same statement when we go see the movie. I don't know where they're going to pick up at in that movie, but I will be there to find out. I want to know, how are you celebrating May the 4th? Are you going to rewatch the original trilogy, or are you going to watch some Disney shows or whatever? Or are you just going to wait till the 22nd to go see The Mandalorian and Grogu? I would love to know. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this recap of The Mandalorian seasons 1, 2, and 3. I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love one another until we speak again. May the Force be with you.